we're not here to make up the numbers, we're here to compete as well. This squad, with the power they have on their day, they can do anything they want.
Hello, welcome to the Glassgirls network. Today I am joined by first team player Esme Moran and social media expert and lifelong Stourbridge fan, Rich Clark. How are you all doing?
Good job. You?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, it's lovely and warm. It's nice to actually get a bit of heat.
Day.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Es, how are you doing from your break from school and break from football?
Yeah, not too bad. It's nice to chill. I always find it hard to relax in off season though, because you know that what's looming, what's coming. So I always feel like I spend more time in the gym and preparing for pre-season than I probably do during pre-season.
I was going to ask this now because you've been obviously with Stourbridge for a little while now. So is this going into this summer slightly different to going into previous summers?
I feel like it's quite similar to last season where, and I think this is the same for quite a few of the girls, no one's naive to think that there's not going to be changes or it's not going to be tougher. I think you can tell on like a lot of the girls' social media, like everyone's still going to the gym, everyone's putting quite a lot of graft, which I do think was similar to last year because we knew it was going to be a jump. This year I do think it's even more so because obviously competing against tougher teams, but you also, and it's not a bad thing, but in terms of amongst the team and amongst, you know, other players that might be signed and other girls who are going to be putting in more work over the summer, you're competing against them as well. So I think there's a lot of work being done off season throughout the whole team, but I think that's quite similar to last year because obviously it's a new league again, but I think with it being tier 3 it's a bit more, you feel like there's more again. It's like you're constantly trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Especially with us, we're constantly trying to catch up on everyone else that's in that league that we're going into, which is it's a nice pressure to have, I suppose, but it doesn't make it less tiring.
Yeah.
I can understand that. So we're going to have a conversation today, just a reflection on last season, which I know you got a few bullet points throughout the whole season, so you can kind of instigate a few conversations with. I think if I could just start one conversation, it was at the start of the season. What was everyone's honest thoughts when we lost Sheffield in that opening game? Was anyone slightly worried at all, or was any concerns at all?
The girls always rinse me about on the coach on the way home from Sheffield. I was like, I think we're getting relegated. I just don't think we could do it. I'm quite a pessimist. I was like, I just don't know if we're going to do it. I don't know if we're good enough, which was stupid because we didn't play bad at all. We just didn't, you know, there were just a couple areas where we weren't as strong as we maybe, well no, I don't even think.
I think personally, coming back as a supporter, coming back from that game, I think I felt a lot of the same things. We seemed to have, on the day I think we fell short in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. Nothing quite went right, and we didn't look like scoring, which was mad when you think about it. Until the County Cup final, that was the only game we didn't score all season. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't look like we were quite up to what the level was going to require. And this was one of the things we talked about before we started, that within a week we came to the Lincoln game, and within 3 minutes we were 2-0 up, we won 7-0, and everything seemed a little bit rosier, or a lot rosier. Yeah. And you know, I think we talked about turning points in the season, and that was, you might say, it was the only one, because from there on everything went relatively smoothly. So what happened in that week?
So after the game, I think everyone was kind of, well, not everyone, that's not true at all. A lot of the girls were like it's a blip. I'm very like panic mode. What can we do to like sort this out? But a lot of the girls were like, it's one off. You know, it's our first game. They've just got relegated from tier 3. If anything, like if you were to put money on it, that's probably the outcome you probably would have assumed. We've just got promoted. They've just got relegated. But I was in like a bit of a, oh my life, panic. Which I think other people were as well, but no one else showed it as much as me, I don't think. And then in the week at training, it was very, which I think it has been throughout the season, it was very, not it is what it is, because obviously people didn't think that, but it was very much okay, this is great. We've seen which areas we need to improve on. We've seen how other teams like to play. We've seen how they like to play. It's the first time us playing together in a competitive fixture. there's not like a pre-season friendly. We found our areas that we need to improve on. Let's go from there. Don't panic. Everyone stay calm, kind of thing. And evidently it worked. Going into Lincoln, I think there was still a lot of like apprehension, but it was a bit calmer. We were at home. Things felt a little bit more into regular routine. Because I think that's the other thing as well that, speaking for myself, I didn't really consider is it was a long journey. There were a lot of nerves. I remember walking out and I was like, oh my life, first tier 4 fixture in like 5 years. And I was really nervous, so I can only imagine that other girls were too. But no, throughout the week it was just very, don't panic, it's fine. They're a good side. They were like one of the favourites to win the league as well. So actually 2-0 wasn't necessarily a bad result against league favourites. So it was very much, I think, keeping everyone under control really, rather than, it might not have been the case, they might have been panicking as much as me, but on the surface it seemed like everyone else was just like, it's fine, like we'll learn from it, and evidently we did, so.
Yeah. See, I wasn't at the Lincoln game, I was on a crazy golf course in North London, which is another story, but what was the mood like after that match?
I think a lot of relief. I feel like this season's all just gone to a bit of a blur for me, but I do remember there being a lot of relief. I remember when Deasy scored that first goal, and it just felt like everyone here, like the fans in the stands, like the sideline, everyone was just like, okay, we can breathe. And then the second goal went in, and it felt a little bit like Lichfield at the end of last season, where I was kind of thinking, I was like, this isn't happening, like this. And then we kept scoring, and I was like, I'm still not. I think we went in at half time about 4-0.
Yeah, 4-0. You
4-0
got one, didn't you?
Oh, I don't remember.
You
One of my 4. We went in at 4-0, and I remember still thinking, I'm still worried. Like this second half, we've still got to come out. And then at the end of the game, it's like, oh, nice, we did it. And especially because Lincoln as well were one of the favourites.
Yeah, they were third the previous season.
Yeah, so we were like, oh, okay, something could be happening here. Obviously, they picked up form throughout the season, but when we came in from that result, it was like, actually we might be all right, because if that's one team that we can beat, there's going to be another team we can beat, and at that point our aim was just to stay up. So
simple as that.
Yeah. So all we had to do was beat 2 teams and hope that everyone else beat those 2 teams, and we were fine. So at that point it was just a relief of like, oh, actually we can stay up here, we're all right. Yeah.
So the week after that, or the midweek after that, we went to Calcer and won 4-0, which was another good performance. But then we went to Northampton on the Sunday, and I think at that stage, even though we only played 3 games, won 2 and lost 1, there was a bit of a feeling building that we might be more than all right.
Yeah.
And then we went to Northampton, and it was bumpy pitch, not an easy game. They started off poorly, so that sort of put everybody in the frame of mind, well, we'll roll these over, maybe unfairly. And Neve scored in the first half, right at the start of the second half, and then we had a really torrid time, didn't we, the last half an hour or so.
Oh, it was horrible.
And they pulled one back, and we really, really had to hang on. What are your memories of that one? Because that one stands out for me as a game that, again, we had to show a different side of ourselves.
Yeah, I pulled up with an injury in the warm-up, so I only really...
I remember.
Yeah. So, I don't even think I played at all. I think I pulled up in the warm-up and then stopped. My bad. So, I remember warming up on the pitch, and I don't necessarily think that helps. I think it was a hamstring injury I had, and I remember thinking, if I put my leg wrong once, oh no, it was my knee. It's my knee from Calcer, and I'm really iffy about knees. They stress me out, especially at the moment. And so I was like, I can't risk it. I don't want to do anything that's going to put me out for the season. So anyway, I just remember it was one of those games where in the changing room, and I mean fairly so, from a player's perspective, it was a lot of, the pitch is terrible, the pitch is hard, the pitch is bobbly, what football are we going to play on this, because it was quite small as well. So usually on a bobbly pitch, if like the Warmorial's having a bad day, you know that you've still got the areas in behind, and you can just go route 1 all day, because the pitch is bobbly. You might get a little bit of an assist of a bump and just volley it half the length, but you couldn't do that on this pitch because it would just roll out. And they had their good players. I remember midfield was a good battle, and it was tough enough in midfield because the pitch was so small, let alone when they had a good midfield. Can't remember her name.
Favour.
Yeah, had a really good game.
Good player. I was impressed with her on the day.
Yeah, she had a really good game. So it was very, I mean, I I'm filled with a lot more nerves on the sideline anyway, because I feel like there's less that you can do to help. But I remember I was nervous the whole time, because even though I think we were the better team, they always looked like they were going to crop up with something at some point. To the point where when they did, I almost felt a little bit calmer, because I was like, they've got their goal now. Maybe they'll set back, but they didn't. And I remember after the game, that felt like maybe even a bigger win than
I think Andy said at the time, I know other people have said it, that was one of the biggest 3 points in the season, that we proved something to ourselves, that we could win other ways, rather than just steamrolling teams, which is something we probably got used to.
Especially when you look at it at the end of the season, when you look at beating Northampton 2-1 at home, in the form that they got into around Christmas to the end of the season. If you take away their bad start. Yeah, that's a really good result against them. It's just, again, a lot of relief.
You mentioned that at the start of the season that you just were looking at getting above 2 teams. So that was like, you're quite low down there, I suppose, in not in your confidence, but maybe in your expectations. I think because of those 3 results out of them 4 games that we just discussed, your mentality went probably, as a fan as well, I did, it went from here to like almost right up here within the space of a month. Was you the same? Because after getting them like 9 points out of 12, was you as a player started thinking, we need to be looking at the top of the table, now not at the bottom of the table, all within the space of a month?
For me, not really. I know there was a couple girls who had thought similar. I know, like, at the very start of the season, Lindsay was like, we can win this league. And I remember thinking, Lindsay, you're mad. Like, that's...
But she knows the league as much as anybody.
She definitely knew the league. And obviously she knew the quality that was around her. But I was thinking, no, this girl's crazy. If I'm honest, I just thought that, like Andy always says, to just take it one game at a time. And that's really what I was doing. I just thought we were in really good form. And I was like, oh, we're in really good form. It wasn't until Christmas when, like, the National League was tweeting, like, oh, here's your league leaders. And we were top of the league. And I was like, oh my life, we're top of the league. But even then I thought, oh, that's really nice. I didn't expect us to stay there. No. Which, like, I don't know, maybe that's... In my head, I'd always... And I remember saying it at the start of the season for the programmes. I remember saying this is a season that we can build on. I was like, last season we wanted to win the league last season. This season, it's just a year that we can just have a nice time, and maybe, I remember saying, like, maybe we can enjoy winning some games, losing some games, drawing some games. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we still did win, lose and draw games, but still not as much as I would have thought. No. And don't get me wrong, it has been a year that we've like rebuilt anyway. Even though we have won the league, it was a year of rebuilding, but just not as much as I thought. I really didn't think, and I don't think anyone except for maybe Lindsay really thought this was ours. Even after those first couple of games, I think everyone thought, oh, we're in really good form, and we're kind of stamping our name onto this league, which is great, and we're kind of showing that we're a tough team to play. Even after we beat Donny, I was like... Yeah, I was going to come on to that match, because that was right at the start of October, and obviously, you look at the league before the season, and you've got names like Peterborough and Lincoln who are recognised Football League clubs for how much that means in women's football. And then you've got Doncaster Rovers Bells, who are arguably the biggest name still, to a degree, in English women's football in terms of their history and what they've contributed to the game. Is that a fixture you looked out for at the start of the season as being a benchmark or something like that? I think I looked at it as one to be excited for, because obviously I knew that they were, again, one of the favourites. Feels like everyone was one of the favourites. Well, they've run into the previous year, yeah. And you can see why. They are a really strong side. I didn't necessarily feel nervous, and I don't know why, because that's really uncommon for me. I'm usually nervous before every game, even if it's one that like we're kind of a bit more favourites to win. I remember being excited for it, and we turned up and it was a nice day and we warmed up really well. And I think everyone just felt really relaxed, which, I don't know, maybe it could have been one of those things where, because they were such favourites to win by this point, was it one that we thought, not that, I mean, I never want to lose, but if we go. Yeah, just give it our best shot. If we win, brilliant. If we lose, okay, that's kind of... Because it was a tight game for a long time, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. First half, and then Meg Hadley, she doesn't score many, but she pulled one out. I remember that. It felt like it skimmed my face. It just went... And then it was Alex's and then Lil's, wasn't it? Yeah, and I thought second half, certainly once Alex had scored, we were
we could have had 3 or 4 more. We were properly on top of the game.
Yeah.
And that felt like we really had established ourselves, and this was something that other teams would sit up and look at that point.
Yeah, I think when I was talking to Soph, and Soph's the same as me, we'll always kind of try to rationalise things in our head. Because then before we had to play Donny again, we got really nervous, and we were like, yeah, but because all 3 of our goals were ridiculously good goals. Meg's, Alex, and Lil's were all insane goals. Like Lil's as well. Like I think people overlook Lil's. That's such a hard header to run, and it was such a good goal.
She found some space so well as well. Didn't
she always did. She always
6 yards out, nobody on her.
Yeah, she always just makes those runs. She's so frustrating to mark. And me and Soph were like, the issue is that we scored 3 worldies against them. You know, if we didn't score worldies, then are we even going to score? Because that's just what we do. We try and we don't ever want to walk into a game complacent. And I think the second time we were playing Donny, we were like, we did so well scoring 3 really good goals last time. What if, you know, for whatever reason, the really good strikes don't come off this time, and then we're kind of in a bit of a...
We'll probably come on to that game a little bit later on, I think, because again, it was a significant match. But by that stage, we were top of the league. Still only lost the 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
Doncaster, I think that was their 2nd defeat, so they were still in contention. Obviously, it's very early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, we played Leek and Wem and Long Eaton in a week. Got 3 good wins, and all of a sudden, I think we were about 9 points clear.
Yeah.
We played more games than other teams, but all of a sudden, the league table was... We played about 9 or 10 games by that point already in the middle of October, and the league table was looking great. And when I was doing a few notes ahead of this, just to jog my own memory, I wrote down one word. I wrote down November, because from my perspective as a spectator, and you look back at the results, we came into November, we had the abandonment against Sheffield right at the end of October, we were 1 each with not long to go. That could have gone either way, I guess, that game. Then we had the plate game against Leafield, where we just scraped through in extra time. Then we lost at Peterborough in extra time in the Cup. Then there was Moors in the County Cup, where we were a goal behind early on. Then Leafield at home, where it was a close game again in the league. Lammy's goal 10 minutes from the end made it 2-0. See all these memories coming back now, and I felt as a spectator, and watching how the season was progressing, I felt that was a really tough month. It was colder, the pitches were getting heavier, we weren't gliding across the surface maybe the way we had been as a team earlier in the season. How did that feel to you?
Yeah, I never really thought about it. I mean, I probably did at the time, but in hindsight, I don't really look back and think about how tough it was, but it was a really tough month. Going to extra time twice was really tough. And then also winning one and having that elation of your typical last minute winner to go on to the next part, and then the week after to be on the receiving side of that, of conceding in the last minute, was quite emotionally tough as well. But I think we just rolled with it. Obviously, Peterborough was a really tough game to take.
Was that a tough one to lift yourselves from in the week afterwards, going into the Moors?
I think so, especially knowing that we had a tough game coming afterwards. I think it was more having to think in terms of recovery as well. We played 120 minutes and 120 minutes. Some people had played all of it, and some people were very leggy. And then to go, the only saving grace was probably that Moors was on an Astro, and that it wasn't on a grass pitch. But it was hard in terms of confidence, because even though, which is crazy to think, so we were top of the league, that was probably our 2nd defeat of the season. We'd beaten Peterborough by that point in the league. I think that was probably another issue, is because we'd beaten Peterborough in the league, we kind of felt a little bit like, what's gone wrong for us to not have won here? But again, there's lots of things in hindsight to look back and think, well, it's not a nice journey to make. It's a very strange journey. The pitch wasn't brilliant. The pitch is very small. They are a very good side. So there's lots of things that, if we really wanted to sit there and be like, well, what's gone wrong? We probably could have had some, not excuses, but attributes to kind of help with our confidence a little bit. But it's one of those things where it almost felt like we didn't have time to worry about these things. You just had to kind of be like, it's happened, let's spend Monday kind of feeling sorry for ourselves, but Tuesday we've got to crack on because we've got another tough game. And it almost makes me think that that's probably worked better. I feel like if we had a game if we had a week off, that probably would have we probably would have had our confidence lower for a longer amount of time, but because we had to go and play Moors, and I think we thought we can't go into this game low confidence, we can't go into this game feeling sorry for ourselves. So Tuesday, Thursday, let's just work hard. Sunday, let's see what happens. Moors, I think I was injured again. Shock. And I remember I was on the bench, and when they scored that first goal, I thought, is this where it all comes crumbling down?
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
But I think it wasn't that far after, it wasn't that much after that we went and scored.
Yeah.
And then I think we scored quite quickly again after.
Yeah, we were 3-1 up by half time.
Yeah.
The second half was a bit, we sort of held them a little bit at arm's length.
Yeah, second
Solid
half
through.
they were, I would say that they were probably more on top of us.
Mm.
But I think we just tried to sit back and see it out. But no, when Moore scored that first goal, I thought, oh no. But we just kept going, and then after the Moors game, I don't really think the Peterborough game really had any hold on us after that.
No, because we went there again in the play, didn't we? Only 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And won 4-0.
Yeah, so it's one of them that's like, okay, let's use this to kick on, which is what I think we did quite a lot this season. If we ever had a result that wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily say we've had that many bad results, but if there's a result that we didn't necessarily feel like went our way, I think we've done very well at not holding on to that.
Yeah, it's one thing I'd say over the last season. I think I made the point statistically, didn't I, that every time we lose a game, we've never let it snowball into 2 or 3 defeats or 2 or 3 games without a win. It's just been one blip, straight back into another run.
It's like the Leafield game at the end of the season. Mike always says, you play so much better when you're angry. So if we concede a goal that we know that we shouldn't have conceded and we're really mad about it, we'll run around and we'll get angry. And he always says, keep playing angry, because we are a very nice side. We got put up for the respectable. So.
Yeah.
I think it was about that time of the season where you look around and see who's second, third and fourth, and I think because the amount of games that some teams have played over other teams, the league was very distorted. There's like a lot of noise in the league where you thought at one point, Leafield was in with a chance of overtaking us, then Kelso, then Moors and Donny. There were so many teams that was like always like on our tail. Did you ever kind of look over your shoulder and start thinking to yourself, this team's more likely to be coming forward than any other team? Was you looking out for any particular teams at this point, or were you still just taking it one game at a time, going into Christmas?
I definitely think we're taking it one game at a time, because I never really looked at us as the front runners. I just kind of looked at us as a team that's just happened to be here, which obviously wasn't the case, but in my brain that's probably the easiest way to process it. I think the thing is as well is women's football, you hear lots of things, like everyone's friends with everyone somewhere, so you hear lots of things, and obviously you have the post-match interviews, and you just hear things that people say. It's women's football, it's like that. So hearing things where people were saying that they think this person's gonna, or like this team's gonna overtake us, or actually they don't think we're that good and they're a better side, and it's all mind games, and it's all people just trying to get a little way in or get a little bit into your head.
Does that motivate you though? If you do hear something negative about you, or hear something negative where someone might say something about your manager or teammate, are you the kind of team that would? You don't see a lot of team that would deflate over that and think, oh, okay, then shrivel up. You'd like stick your chest out and prove them wrong. That's the way it comes across to me. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think we tried to block out quite a lot of it. I think since I've come to the club, which was when we were in Tier 6, and the club had announced that they'd started to pay finances, there's been a lot of people that have had negative things to say about the club, which has never really made any sense to me in my brain. I don't know why you wouldn't want women's football to be supported, but anyway. So I think the few of us who have been here from there, we've kind of got very used to hearing lots of negative things about the club. So I think we're very good at tuning that out. But then I think if there is anything that's a bit more personal or a bit more like, where's that come from? Why have you said that? We have been very much like, we use it to fire us up and we use it to motivate us. But I also think that we don't let it go too far. I think there's like a very happy medium of ignoring the bits that are just people trying to get to you, and then also getting too fired up that you're going to hit someone. We always try and sit in this place of like, we know you've said this, we'll deal with it on the pitch as and when we need to, but also I'm not going to lose sleep about it, because there's no point in that. So yeah, I just think it's when we could hear people saying things and have people talking about where we were going to finish in the league and how we've just kind of what I was thinking, we've just had a very good start. Because I never really thought that we were front runners, I was like, okay, like that's fine. We might finish second or third. That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Like that's fine if Donny. I mean, it's obviously I wanted to win the league, but in my head I was like, oh yeah, if Donny win and we come second, that's a good season. That.
Yeah.
But it was never it never made me have my back up thinking like, oh, this person might overtake us. It was only when there were teams that I wouldn't necessarily feel like deserved it in terms of when we've played them. If I feel like we've been the better team and if they look like they were going to be ahead of us in the league, I'd be like, oh, that's a bit frustrating. But also that's football, so yeah, I don't think I ever really put too much thought into the league.
So we came to the end of that run of fixtures at the end of November or early December, and then, although we didn't know it at the time, obviously we had a 6-week break with the weather and Christmas, and then coming into the new year, a couple of postponements.
Was that when?
We had the Sutton game called off down here, didn't we?
Yes,
And then again after Christmas, and then we went to Sutton and played. I think we had about 6 weeks off altogether. But before Christmas, we signed Lois and then Lexi. And with hindsight, obviously, that they turned out to be very significant signings. Did it feel like that at the time?
Yeah, definitely. I've played with Lexi when I was at Stoke when I was 18. I think Lexi was 16, 17. So I knew of her, played with her in midfield. Knew she was like a really lovely girl, knew she was like very hard working. And I thought she'd be coming into the midfield because obviously that's where I played with her. Which was a little bit stressful because obviously it's another midfielder, but I was like, yeah, it's Lexi, like
Healthy
she'll be great.
competition.
Yeah, definitely. And I knew her and I knew she was a good player, so I was like, yes, like she'll be sound. If I get dropped for someone that's better than me, that's life, isn't it? And that's kind of what I was thinking, but I was just really excited because I knew she'd get along with the girls as well. And I knew that she was a great player. Then when I realised she was playing as a forward, because I have Lexi on social media and stuff as well, and I'd seen the goals that she'd been scoring for TNS, and I was like, nice, like this is going to be great. Like pacey as well. There's I'm sure we'll talk about at one point, at Leek, when she scored her goal at Leek, and we were watching the footage of it here, and you just see a bomb through. And similar with Lois, I didn't know Lois, but I knew of her in terms of women's football. And I knew the kind of player that she was, and I knew that she was scoring at Boldmere in Tier 3 when they were kind of struggling with their results, which I always think is an indicator of a good player. If you're losing games but scoring goals, then you're obviously doing something right. It's like Harry Kane. Harry Kane scored 30 goals this season, and he's got that Spurs team around him. It's a little bit insane. So when they both came in, I thought, this is great. Like, I don't think we've ever really had a season where we've signed players mid-season to kind of bolster us.
Not many. Yeah.
We've
I
probably
can't
had.
think of many.
No, I can't either. Which I feel like if there is any, it's going to seem really offensive. I'm trying to think.
Kev came in mid-season, didn't she? And then immediately we got shut down because of COVID. But that's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can't think of another one since then.
So I think it was like that kind of showed where we were, that even though we were doing really well in the league, we still wanted to sign these other players just to kind of like shape us a little bit more. I think it showed in the end, didn't it? There's just that extra strength. Yeah, definitely.
The extra depth.
This season wasn't that long, but it felt so long, and I couldn't imagine having done it with some of the injuries that we started to pick up towards the end, having extra players around, let alone of the quality that they are, just was that extra bit, and it just meant that you had players who you could rest a little bit more. And like, the Sutton game, it was roll on, roll off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to roll on, roll off, and I mean, Lois went down with a knee, and then ended up coming and then to have Lois come off and Lexi come on, and not Lexi come off quickly after, but that wasn't her fault. But to be able to have those two as well, just to come on as fresh legs, and kind of, it was a good game for them to come into as well, where obviously it was a little bit of a personal game, being Sutton. We kind of wanted to show where we are in comparison to where we were last season. But it was also something new for Sutton to deal with, and something new for us as well, to be like, okay, how are they going to fit into our style of play? And it was like they'd always been there. Yeah,
because it was very it's difficult for them to start with, because Lois was cup tied for the plate. We had the big long break, and Lexi got herself sent off, bless her, and missed a few games because of that. So I felt like sort of almost March time, even though they'd signed November, December, or sort of coming into March and April, the last couple of months of the season, they really came into their own, the two of them. And they, that last couple of months made such a huge difference. Coming back after Christmas, you mentioned we played Sutton, and then we played, we should have played at Hull in the plate, and that was postponed. Obviously, we'd had the weekend away, so we had to go up the following week. But John and I went down to Portsmouth, didn't we? Because we weren't able to do the weekend away at Hull, either of us, for different reasons. So we went down to the Portsmouth match with the reserves. That was a cracking day out, wasn't it? And I think it's worth mentioning the reserves. We talked about the Peterborough game. They played at Enfield the same day in their plate competition.
Yeah.
And between the two teams, we scored 10 goals, 2 wins, 2 quarterfinals. And the atmosphere around that day, I think, I didn't go to either game because I was ill, the Enfield Peterborough weekend, but to go to Portsmouth and then to go to Hull the following week, two big games for the club. I think they were.
Yeah.
The whole game. I don't know what that felt like to play in, but that felt like probably the game of the season.
That was a really tough game. It felt like playing a tier 3 side. They just moved the ball really quick, and they were really fit, and they were really strong, and they were really tall. When we turned up, I remember I think it was Alex walked past someone and came over to me and went, "I've just walked past someone and I'm really hoping it was the goalkeeper." And it wasn't. They were all so tall. And we knew they were going to be good. We'd seen footage of them. We saw how fast they could move the ball. I honestly think the pitch being as boggy as it was really helped us because it was so hard to play football on it for us. Obviously, we struggled stringing passes together, but you could see how fast they could move the ball, and they weren't being able to do that because of the pitch. I'd like to think that we had some playing it as well in terms of stopping them playing the ball as quick as they could.
Yeah.
But they had such speedy wingers, and everyone seemed really speedy. So having the ball just stop was brilliant. It really helped, but it was a really tough fixture.
Yeah. Going to pick out a couple of individual things from that game, which we probably haven't really done yet. The winning goal, Neve Deasy, really quality finish, and that probably a really good illustration of what she's, 1 or 2 chances during the game. If she takes one of those chances or both of those chances, that's what she's there for. And I thought that was a really, really good finish and a good little ball from Lammy to set her up. And at the other end, I thought Amy Preston made 2 of the best saves she's made. It's just those moments where individuals have stood up. I think that was a typical example on both ends of the pitch that day.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, like I said, with the ball stopping, I remember Deasy had a couple of chances, but the ball just died in front of her. I remember there was one that looked like it was going to bounce, and Deasy was going to dink it over the keeper, but I remember the ball just got stuck. And it's one of them that you think there's nothing more that you could have done. You've made the run, you've got to the ball, it's just that the ball's just completely stopped where no one was anticipating it. But no, that second goal, I feel like it was really against run of play. If I remember right, they'd had a lot of the ball the entire game, to be honest. And I remember on that break, I was walking back. I think I was cooling down, and I was walking back towards the bench, and I just saw it going. It was one of them that it's just you waiting. Oh no, it was really good. And yeah, Amy had a class game. I think she got man of the match, didn't she?
She did that day, yeah. I remember she clawed one out of the top corner.
Oh
yeah. Just the sort of save that people say women's goalkeepers don't make.
Yeah.
They say the goal should be made smaller, but how she reached that, I don't know. And then there was one that came point blank through the crowd, isn't the penalty area, wasn't there? Fairly late in the game.
That game against Hull was the start of us winning in a different type of way. The fans were saying, we dug in there. We dug in here against Calsa, I think maybe Moors as well, shortly after. It was like, it wasn't just us being ourselves and passing the ball around and winning pretty. We actually won ugly for about 3 games in the space of the month there. And I think for me, that kind of showed that we had the winning mentality as well. We did what we had to do to make sure that we won the game or hang on to the draw, which we needed to do, I think against Calsa, wasn't it? And that was when I started to believe that, okay, so mentally now you're actually able to do this as well. And I don't know if you felt the same, Rich, but I think seeing them win them kind of games just added another string to the bow.
Yeah, I think we had 5 home games on the trot, which included Moors in the league and Calsa in the league, and then Doncaster rounded it off the 5 games. And in between we had Solihull Sporting in the County Cup. Okay, probably wasn't the most difficult game of the season, and we also had Crawley in the plate semi-final, so another really big game. But those 3 league games in particular, I think just the way the league table fell, each of those games was first against second at the time. And you look back and you think, well, if we'd lost all 3 of those games, which wasn't inconceivable,
No.
the league table would have looked very, very different. In the end, we took 7 points out of 9, and we had to grind out the win against Moors after about 3 hours of injury time, whatever it was. Come from behind twice against Calcer to get a draw, and then the Doncaster game. Obviously, they'd come level on points. So that they say we were 9 points clear at one point.
Yeah.
They were level on points. We'd still got a game in hand. So if that had gone the other way, you talk about turning points. Maybe that was one where we could have been 3 points behind. Instead, we were 3 points ahead with a game in hand. And I felt that this is probably unfair because I've only seen them play twice against us, but I felt in both games they didn't quite lay a punch on us, down to our defensive ability in those 2 games. We talk about the goals we score, but the clean sheets we've kept, and in the clean sheets we've kept in the significant games like Moors and Doncaster twice, that's been the key to the season. How did you feel about that run of games?
I remember the 3, and I think we'd said if we get 6 out of the 9 points, that'll be really good. And when we drew to Calcer, I think we were all, I was disappointed. I thought, like, on the night, I think it was a really good result.
It was a really good game.
Really good game. Yeah. Really good. Really frustrating at times, but was a good game. And on the night, I thought fair, like a draw was very fair for both sides. But then when you look that we beat Moors and we beat Donny, it was like, oh, like really? We couldn't have also just beat Calcer. But I said it to Andy. I said, if you told me you're playing Calcer, Moors, and Donny, and you're going to come out with 7 points, I would have took a draw against Moors or Donny. I think the only reason why I was a little bit disheartened with it being against Calcer, because they were a really good side and they were having a really good run at that point. But because we'd beaten them earlier in the season, I think that was the one that was kind of we'd assumed, which maybe was part of the issue. That would probably be
they were a better team by then, weren't they?
Yeah,
well?
definitely.
And they came and had a real go at us.
Oh yeah, I think we were expecting them to attack less, which I know is stupid because I know that's the whole point of football. But I think we were expecting them to sit behind the ball a little bit more, but they didn't. They absolutely threw the house at it. And fair play to them because they did do really well with it. But I said, because I think Andy might have felt a bit similar with that, like, oh, really, like we drew. But I said you would have took a draw against Donny and you would have took beating Calcer and beating Moors. It's the exact same thing. It's just that it's flipped.
Yeah.
And we said, if anything, that's worked. Drawing against Calcer rather than drawing against Moors or Donny probably worked more in our favour because we've now took all the points from Donny and Moors, who were closer to us in the league, rather than giving Calcer an extra point, which I think, might have jumped them up to 4th or something. But in terms of the run for like the actual cup, the trophy, it didn't really matter that much that we'd given Calcer a point. It just mattered that we didn't give Donny or Moors any points really. So yeah. I think at the end of it we were just relieved that it was. Honestly, I feel like this whole season has just been we're really nervous and then we're relieved, and then we're really nervous then we're relieved again. But no, it was having those 3 fixtures done, which were Andy kept calling. What month was it?
February.
He kept calling it like Big February or something like that, and it kept on being like, once we get February done, we're in the clear. We weren't. Once again, it was more nerves and then more relief. But it was having those ones done was like the big ones. But then the issue is, I always say that we're a little bit like Liverpool. We beat the teams that we shouldn't, and we struggle against the teams that we shouldn't. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe.
So like Liverpool beat City and they beat Chelsea, but they'll lose to like Palace.
Yeah.
Like, I always say we're quite similar in that sense, and I don't know what it is because we go into every game the exact same. We go into every game. I
think you can find it hard sometimes against teams that come and sit back and just try and defend the goal. And to be fair, probably not many teams have really done that. I mean, even Long Eaton came here and had a go at us.
Yeah.
In their place as well.
Yeah, they did. They didn't just sit back. They did really well actually.
How about the game against Crawley in the plate semi-final in between? Was that another, because it's a cup tie and all eyes are on the league, was that another no pressure game, or was it because we were playing for a place in a national final? Was that a pressured game?
I think it was intended to be a no pressure game, but it didn't feel like a no pressure game, especially because we knew that there were tier 3, and it was kind of like, okay, let's see where we are. Obviously it's a different league, so slightly different, but we wanted to see where we were at. And I really enjoyed the game, which that sounds like I don't usually enjoy the games, but it was one of them that I just felt like everything just fit and went to place really well, and like I just think it was one of those games. It was just a really nice day. Like I felt like in the midfield we had a lot of time to just pick our passes, and yeah, I don't know, it was just a good day.
We got 2 goals fairly on, didn't we, Millie and then sorry, you call her Millie, she'll kill me. Mill and Lammy with the overhead kick.
Oh yeah.
And we always felt in control after that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it was one of them that was just like, oh wow, okay, we did it. We had prepped for it quite a lot. We had a footage session here, and there'd been a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of how they play. But other than that, yeah, I just think it was one of those days that everything just fell into place really nicely for us. And when we got the 2 goals, it was, I don't necessarily think we sat back. We probably could have attacked more, but it was just one of them, like, okay, let's just see this out now.
Yeah, just manage
especially in terms of like injuries and stuff, kind of make your rotations earlier, because I think we were doing better than maybe we expected to be doing in that game. Given that they're a tier 3 side and it was a cup game, they're usually a little bit more aggy, but yeah, it just was great. Yeah,
it was a good afternoon, no question. Coming out of that game, we went to Lincoln, didn't we? No, coming after the Doncaster game, we went to Lincoln, and I think we got through that run of games in February and Doncaster early March, and I think we got, I might not get them in the right order, but we got Lincoln, Wem, Long Eaton and Leek for the following 4 games.
Yeah.
And you look at those on paper and you look at the league table, having come through that run of 3 games with 7 points, you think, right, okay, we should get 12 points from these games. And of course we went to Lincoln, and that was a long afternoon.
Yeah, that was not a fun. We went from Crawley, that was a really fun game, to Lincoln, that was not a fun game.
What were your memories of that afternoon?
I remember turning up and I remember thinking that we seemed complacent, which is rare for us. But it sounds really bad, but sometimes it's tough to not, like, obviously we knew, like at the start of the season we knew that they were a good side, but looking at their results, and obviously we did a footage session here and looking at the other results they got, I think they had come out with a couple draws against some teams, but again, I don't know if we just kind of overlooked it and thought that it was just that, I don't know, that team had a blip that day, but I don't think we ever expected us to have a blip. Saying that, I don't necessarily, I think the first 30 minutes, I don't think we felt like we were there. The pitch wasn't brilliant. I'm pretty sure the ref wasn't brilliant. However, I remember thinking it in the warm-up, we were warming up and I thought, something doesn't feel right today. We weren't stringing passes together very well. And to be fair, usually for us, when we warm up bad, we usually play all right. And when we warm up quite well, we usually start a bit iffy. I don't know what it is. We always say it. So we warmed up not brilliant, but I thought maybe it's just one of them. I remember we were doing the shooting. I don't think many people scored. And so we started the game and they scored pretty fast, wasn't it?
4 or 5 minutes, if that.
And I remember just standing there and I was like, what is going on? I couldn't work out where the player had come from. I couldn't work out who she was. It felt like, I think they did a really good job of making us feel really overwhelmed. I didn't know whose player it was. I didn't know how she'd ended up scoring. I don't know how the ball had ended up there, because we had the ball. And I remember just kind of looking around and I was just flummoxed. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I honestly don't think it was until about the 70th minute when we had, I think Lexi and Lois came on at half time, didn't they? No, it was Lois and Lindsay.
Might have been, yeah.
Came on.
Yeah.
I think it was at half time. And that was when I started to feel a little bit more settled. I think this was the game as well that we went into the change room at half time and they were playing Free From Desire. And we were all sat there like, what is going on? I can't remember what the score was. Was it 1-0 going in at half time?
1-0 down at half time, yeah.
And obviously that was a very, that was one of them that we were kind of sat there like, what are you doing? But also you can't blame them for doing it, because we'd be doing the exact same thing, because the changing rooms, the changing rooms joined together.
Yeah.
So you had the room here and the room here, and then there was like a weird little corridor with like doors, so you could hear pretty much everything that was being said. So obviously the team talk had to be quiet anyway, which always, it does affect more, because we're a very like passionate side, like very loud, very like we get each other up for it. And obviously we couldn't because we didn't want to speak too loud because what could they hear? I think we'd forgotten the speaker, so we couldn't play our music. So all we could hear at half time was Freed from Desire and them lot having the time of their lives at half time. And we were like, okay, let's use this as our motivation. Second half, let's go out. And we did. We really went out second half and we were like, let's go. Ended up 2-1 up.
Took a long time to get the equaliser, didn't it? Lois twisted and turned the defender.
Oh yeah, that was stressful. I was like, shoot.
Then 4 or 5 minutes later, we got the penalty, the handball.
Yeah.
And at that point, you kind of think, thank God for that, 3 points.
At that point, yeah,
let's go home.
I think again, everyone kind of settled into, okay, and then we'd started to time waste a little bit in the corner.
First time I ever saw us take the ball to a corner flag.
Yeah.
First time I ever saw us do it.
Which at the time, I really agree. At the time, I was like, yeah, like there can't be long left. Take it to the corner flag. You know, we've got Lexi and Lois in the corner who are strong players. Like, we've got the players to take it to the corner. But it's one of them that in hindsight, you think, could we have gone and got the third? Which we probably could have done. But again, we probably could have tried to go and got the third and ended up with the same result. So
you don't know, do you?
No. So when they went back and equalised as a picture, they put it on their Twitter and you could see me in the background, like head in hand. Which again at the time, oh my life, that felt like a loss. And I remember talking to Soph on the way back and said I really thought this was the season that we were going to get used to losing. And this is a draw and it feels like a terrible loss. And we kept, whenever we talk about it, it'd be like, oh yeah, and then we lost at Lincoln. We'd always have to remind ourselves like we didn't lose. It felt like a loss because, but I think what made it more frustrating was it was our own fault. There was nothing, like I said, the pitch wasn't brilliant. I don't think the ref was brilliant, but we had it in our hands. And also we turned up a little bit complacent. So we turned up complacent. They'd gone and finished it really well. That first goal, and then second half it was in our hands. And I don't know where it went wrong, but it wasn't.
Do you say to yourselves in the dressing room, you know, over the course of a 30 or 35 game season, whatever it is, we're going to have 1 or 2 of these days? Because that's just life. Can you compartmentalise it like that? Put it to bed like that?
I think we can, but not immediately. I remember the change room was like, as you could imagine, quite I don't want to say low because that sounds a bit dramatic, but it wasn't how it usually is. And I think if anyone tried to say like, oh girls, it's just one of those days, someone probably would have been hit. Probably Andy would have hit someone. But it was kind of one of them that's like, let's kind of, sounds terrible, let's get over this in the way that we need to get over this. If that's by watching the footage back and seeing what happened, if that's by just kind of moving past it and not looking back at it. I think we all just kind of got changed and went out and got on the coach home. And then I remember on the way home we kind of had a sing-song and we tried to like lift ourselves up again. And I think there was quite a few like honest conversations on the way home, you know, in terms of like, how did I do? Like, you know, everyone wants a little bit of affirmation when you come on or if you've come off and if you feel like you made a mistake. And there is a lot of conversations of like, how did you think I did? Was there anything? Just between friends, just kind of asking for opinions and stuff. And I think that was one of them that really made us wake up and think no fixtures are given here.
No.
And obviously going forward to Leek and Long Eaton, we didn't want to think the same thing where, again, on paper, yeah, this probably should be our 3 points, but if anything, it was probably just another wake-up call that we probably needed. I think we've been quite lucky where not saying that we needed a wake-up call the first week of the season, but if there's a time for it, it's the first week of the season. If there's a time for it, it's before your last however many games to really see out the season. So as much as it was horrible and I didn't enjoy it at all, it probably was the perfect timing for it. And realistically, again, it's not like we gave Donny 3 points. We gave Lincoln a point and we gave ourselves a point, which Lincoln were kind of in a bit of a relegation battle at that point. So do them a favour, not done us loads of favours, but we also haven't got no points. So I think you've got to kind of twist it to see how it can benefit you rather than just that was a poor result.
Well, that was interesting that it says that you ask your teammates for feedback. Is that something that like you do often, and how do you take that? Like, are they very honest with you back, and are you honest with your teammates as well when you ask for that feedback?
I think so. I don't think, to be honest, for me anyway, like sometimes you'll have people that message you be like, oh, like, hey, I think you played well today, and I'll be like, oh, thanks, like, I don't think I did. But it's more of like almost like a venting. Obviously, like you message people to say they played well, to be nice and just to kind of give people a boost at times, or if you know that someone doesn't think they played very well, you'll message them to be like, stop that, you've been incredible. So I do think it's more of a confidence thing rather than I would never feel like I'm in a position to tell someone areas that they could improve, because who am I to tell people that? So I think it's whenever it's like, if someone says to someone, oh, how did I play, or did you think I did okay when I came on? For me anyway, if I ask that, to be honest, I'm not asking for it as a... It's usually people like Sophie or Hannah who would never tell me I played bad, even if I thought I did. But yeah, I think, I don't know, it's usually, for me, it's usually to my closest friends who I know that if there was anything that I felt down about, or I could be like, I just, you know, I shouldn't have done this, it's usually they'll turn around and be like, that's not the case, X, Y, Z could have happened. And I think everyone does it in their own way, just to kind of get that little confidence boost. If someone did ever turn around to me and said, I mean, no, that's such a lie, because I'm quite an honest person. So if someone said to me, like, let's say Hannah said to me, I think I should have done this, I probably would turn around and be like, oh, maybe, but X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there's lots of honest conversations, but only ever to help people. And that's the same, you know, if someone ever feels like they need to have a conversation with someone else because of, I don't know, something that's been said on the pitch, it's usually just something to get a second opinion rather than a absolute, yeah, you should do this. It's like, oh, maybe. It's just to kind of be there for someone to, if they feel like, or if I feel like someone needs a chat to help them or to lift their mood or help their confidence or kind of guide them through a situation. I think everyone's always very happy to have those conversations in our team. We are a very close group, and I don't think anyone would begrudge at someone for coming to them for kind of those conversations or for asking for that help.
Yeah.
Which I think we're quite lucky with, because you probably would have some teams where they're not willing to help you because it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world at some point.